Hello, everybody. Here we are. We're going to get going with Ezekiel 46. Now, I want to address two things. Last night, I told you we're almost at the end of the Old Testament, so to speak. We still have about 12 more books, but I forgot to say one thing. The next book that we're going into is the book of Daniel, and I believe it has 11 chapters, but it's a book of prophecy of the end times, so it's extremely interesting. We're going to have to pick our way through it. We're probably going to get a lot of help for things that aren't so obvious, or to put it in perspective, put some of the prophecy in perspective historically or time-wise, by using the concordance that Pastor Guzik has up, Enduring Word, okay? So that's going to be a very interesting book, and that's coming up after tonight, because we're going to finish Ezekiel tonight. We're going to do 46, 47, and 48. We did talk about that the temple that was spelled out by the Lord in the previous chapters of Ezekiel was for the building of the second temple. The third temple has not been built. I don't know if the third temple is going to be built to those specifications. I have a feeling it will be. That they will stay in keeping with what the Lord has designed. So we may see a perfect replica of the second temple erected when the third temple goes up. Now that's going to be part of the prophetic timeline. I haven't studied it, so I have no idea when. There are theologians and scholars that can tell you the third temple should be going up at this point in time. In the end days, okay? And now, I think we're in the end days, all right? That's me, okay? You don't have to agree with me. So we may be seeing that sooner rather than later. We may not be here when that happens. I don't know where to place it in current history, okay? So let's get going with Ezekiel 46. I also want to mention one more thing. We were talking last night about abstinence versus celibacy, and I had told you that celibate people do not ever feel romantic feelings for another person. It's just not part of how they're created, okay? They are absolutely set aside for the Lord. In scientific terms, we call them asexual. But in spiritual terms, they're celibates, and for some reason the Lord has set them aside. They don't feel those romantic feelings to mingle with somebody else, okay? Now, an abstinent person is simply being abstinent to honor the Lord. It's a tough walk, yes it is, but it is chosen by some, myself included. But abstinence does not mean we don't have romantic feelings. It doesn't mean that we may not, when I say I've been alone for all of these years, I don't mean that I haven't had boyfriends, that I haven't had companionship. I have had those things. They just didn't, and a couple times I would have married. Well, one time I would have actually married, but the Lord didn't allow it. So, I'm very aware that the Lord has his hand in my walk of abstinence, okay? But I just want to make that delineation that an abstinent person does have romantic feelings or can feel those. And certainly since and I'll tell you a story. I went to my pastor once many years ago and I said, "Oh my God, what if I'm a celibate?" And he laughed. And he said, "No, you can't be." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Because you've had children." And this is where I learned that celibate people don't have those feelings. And I've met celibate people in my walk with the Lord who are Christians, and they will tell you they just don't have those feelings. It's just not part of who they are, okay? So they are set aside to do something for the Lord that includes their celibacy. And, if a person is called to it, they can endure it. So it's not a miserable thing. It's just different types of people, okay? So, you should never feel sorry for a person who's abstinent or celibate. We're comfortable with what we've been called to do. Once again, though, you can pray for me because occasionally I feel very lonely. And I'm not entirely sure whether I'll have companionship in this life. I think I want that, but I don't know because I'm very happy the way I am. So you can be lonely and be happy too. So anyway, just wanted to make that delineation. Let's get going with Ezekiel 46. This is what the sovereign Lord says. The gate of the inner court facing east is to be shut on the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath day and on the day of the new moon, it's to be opened. The prince is to enter from the outside through the portico of the gateway and stand by the gatepost. The priests are to sacrifice his burnt offering and his fellowship offerings. He's to bow down in worship at the threshold of the gateway and then go out. But the gate will not be shut until evening. On the Sabbaths and new moons, the people of the land are to worship in the presence of the Lord at the entrance of that gateway. The grain offering given with the burnt offering the prince brings to the Lord on the Sabbath day is to be 6 male lambs and a ram, all without defect. The grain offering given with the ram is to be an ephah, and the grain offering with the lambs is to be as much as he pleases, along with a hin of olive oil for each ephah. On the day of the new moon, he's to offer a young bull, 6 lambs, and a ram, all without defect. So no club feet, no open sores, no cleft palate, nothing, just a really perfect specimen, okay? He is to provide as a grain offering 1 ephah with the bull, 1 ephah with the ram, and with the lambs as much as he wants to give, along with a hin of oil for each ephah. When the prince enters, he's to go in through the portico of the gateway, and he's to come out the same way. So this is a little different than the way, sorry, I'm screwing around with my bangs here. I still haven't cut them the way they look nice, so forgive me. This is a little different than the way we heard it when Moses was telling people how they would do this. So this is, I don't ever remember hearing he can offer as much as he pleases. But then we are talking about the prince here too. And the prince, we don't know who that is yet. When the prince provides a free will offering to the Lord, whether a burnt offering or fellowship offerings, the gate facing east is to be opened for him. He shall offer his burnt offering or his fellowship offerings as he does on the Sabbath day. Then he shall go out, and after he's gone out, the gate will be shut. Every day you're to provide a year-old lamb without defect for a burnt offering to the Lord. Morning by morning you shall provide it. You are also to provide with it morning by morning a grain offering, consisting of 1/6 of an ephah with 1/3 of a hin of oil to moisten the flour. The presenting of this grain offering to the Lord is a lasting ordinance. In other words, it's not going to change. This is what the Lord wants. So the lamb and the grain offering and the oil shall be provided morning by morning for a regular burnt offering. And I want to stop here and say that at the end of days, whether it's now or later or whenever, and the 3rd temple is built, the Jews will start the sacrifices again. And so that when that starts happening, things are truly wrapping up. And hopefully we won't be here. And once again, I haven't looked into the timeline of it, but there will be a time where they are going to start sacrificing again. And I'm assuming that they're going to be looking very closely at the book of Ezekiel and making sacrifices just like this, because this is the 2nd temple and this is the way the Lord wants it. And he's saying lasting ordinances. So I'm assuming that the Orthodox Jews who go by, they didn't really care too much about the prophets, but I'm assuming that they will look, they do honor the book of Ezekiel, okay? But we remember the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, which are what? Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Exodus, etc., Genesis. But they do honor their prophets, and they do have a place for the prophets, even though this isn't considered part of the Torah. But I am assuming that this is the way the temple will go when it goes up for a 3rd time. So, it seems to make sense, but who knows? This is what the sovereign Lord says. If the prince makes a gift from his inheritance to one of his sons, it will also belong to his descendants. It's to be their property by inheritance. If, however, he makes a gift from his inheritance to one of his servants, the servant may keep it until the year of freedom, then it will revert to the prince. His inheritance belongs to his sons only. It is theirs. The prince must not take any of the inheritance of the people, driving them off their property. He's to give his sons their inheritance out of his own property, so that not one of my people will be separated from their property. Then the man brought me through the entrance at the side of the gate to the sacred rooms facing north. And this would be the man that had the rod in his hand that was measuring out the temple in front of Ezekiel, okay? Which belonged to the priests. So the sacred rooms facing north belonged to the priests, and showed me a place at the western end. He said to me, this is the place where the priests are to cook the guilt offering and the sin offering, and bake the grain offering, to avoid bringing them into the outer court and consecrating the people. He then brought me to the outer court and led me around to its four corners, and I saw in each corner another court. In the four corners of the outer court were enclosed courts. You know, my mind is turning here and thinking about avoiding consecrating the people. I'm assuming that if the people are carrying sin, you don't want to consecrate that sin. And so that's why the garments the priests wore were to be taken off before they went out to the people. The food is not to be carried in front of them that has been prepared by the priests. Surely it will be served to them, but you know, the Lord is saying we don't want to accidentally consecrate anybody, because I think that might be putting a blessing, so to speak, on potential sin. Okay. He then brought me to the outer court and led me around to its four corners, and I saw in each corner another court. In the four corners of the outer court were enclosed courts, 40 cubits long and 30 cubits wide. Each of the courts in the four corners were the same size. Around the inside of each of the four courts was a ledge of stone with the places for fire built all around under the ledge. He said to me, these are the kitchens where those who minister at the temple are to cook the sacrifices of the people. Okay, Ezekiel 47. The man brought me back to the entrance of the temple, and I saw water coming out from under the threshold of the temple towards the east, for the temple faced east. The water was coming down from under the south side of the temple, south of the altar. He then brought me out from the north gate and led me around the outside to the outer gate facing east, and the water was trickling from the south side. As the man went eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits and then led me through the water that was ankle deep. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and led me through the water that was knee deep. He measured off another 1,000 and led me through the water that was up to the waist. He measured off another 1,000, but now it was a river that I could not cross because the water had risen and was deep enough to swim in, a river that no one could cross. He asked me, Son of man, do you see this? Then he led me back to the bank of the river. When I arrived there, I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river. He said to me, this water flows towards the eastern region and goes down into the Arabah, where it enters the Dead Sea. Now we remember the Arabah is a river. When it empties into the sea, the salty water there becomes fresh. Swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish because this water flows there and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En Gedi to En Eglam, where there will be places to En Eglam. There will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the Mediterranean Sea, but the swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They will be left for salt. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail. Every month they'll bear fruit because the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will serve for food and their leaves for healing. Now this is interesting because this is exactly what the eternal city, what heaven, the city in heaven is going to be like. The leaves of the trees on either side of the great river are going to be for the healing of nations. So this is definitely a preamble to that prophecy. It's a prophecy whether Ezekiel knows it or not, realizes it or not. This is what the sovereign Lord says. These are the boundaries of the land that you will divide among the 12 tribes of Israel as their inheritance, with 2 portions for Joseph. Now remember, Joseph, it was Joseph and Benjamin, his brother, okay? You are to divide it equally among them, because I swore with uplifted hand to give it to your ancestors. This land will become your inheritance. This is to be the boundary of the land. On the north side, it will run from the Mediterranean Sea by the Hethlon road past Lebo Hamath to Zedad, Berotah, and Sibraim, which lies on the border between Damascus and Hamath, as far as Hazar Hatticon, which is the border of Horon. The boundary will extend from the sea to Hazar Enan along the northern border of Damascus, with the border of Hamath to the north. This will be the northern boundary. Isn't it amazing that we live in a time where Damascus is still here? I mean, it's an ancient city written of in Holy Scripture. On the east side, the boundary will run, or not city, but land. On the east side of the boundary will run between Horan, that's Hauran, and Damascus, along the Jordan, which is the Jordan River, between Gilead and the land of Israel to the Dead Sea and as far as Tamar. This will be the eastern boundary. On the south side, it will run from Tamar as far as the waters of Meribah Kadesh, then along the Wadi of Egypt. Now, a wadi is what do you call it? It's a dell. It's a dip. A wadi, if you look in the desert, a wadi would be a place where the sand dips down, okay, into like a trough, okay? The Wadi of Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea. This will be the southern boundary. On the west side, the Mediterranean Sea will be the boundary to a point opposite Lebo Hamath. This will be the western boundary. And, okay, you are to distribute, I was thinking that David Koresh, when I saw the word Kadesh, I was like, wasn't that guy's name who led that group of Branch Davidians, which is a cult from the cult of Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, why are they a cult? Because there is some heresy in what they believe. Okay, they've taken some things and made them different. Okay, and the Branch Davidians were a small group out in Texas, Waco. And interestingly enough, I know one of the survivors, and I really respect him. His name is David Thibodeau. You can find him in my friends list. And I've enjoyed talking with him. I've gotten his book and read it. What he lived through is unbelievable. It's interesting, though, because I'm not sure where he's at with God today. And, you know, I haven't asked, but it seems like he still holds on to the beliefs that he was given by David Koresh. And if you haven't seen the miniseries on Netflix called Waco, you should watch it. It gives a human side to what they went through while not holding back on the facts and showing you what happened there. But, you know, one thing my friend David Thibodeau said, I know I'm digressing here, just bear with me. One thing he said about David Koresh, because you have to remember, these were a bunch of musicians. David Koresh was a talented guitar player and singer. And my friend David Thibodeau is a drummer. And that's how he hooked up with David Koresh. He was his drummer. And it wasn't like, hey, come be a drummer for a cult. It was, you know, let's play together. Let's, you know, play music together. And the one thing I remember David Thibodeau saying to me was, I just knew David as a musician. And when he said that, my heart broke, because I totally understand that. I mean, when you meet someone and you're in music, or maybe not in music, but when you meet them as a guitar player, that's how you think of them for the rest of their lives. That's a guitar player. That's a drummer. That's a bass player. You know, maybe I was in music too long. I don't know. But when he said that, I understood it. In other words, he wasn't looking for narcissism or psychopathy in David Koresh. David was just his friend. And he said, I just knew him as a musician. You know, or maybe he said as a guitar player. But it broke my heart, because that I understood. Because, of course, you're asking him, you know, what did you see in him? Well, it wasn't deep. He just knew him as a fellow musician. It's a very, very human story, and extremely sad, because those people lost people they loved to the tune of, I believe, 76 people, with a third of them being children. And those people were loved. They loved each other. There's a human side to that story, and there's a media side to that story. And that's why I'm telling you to watch Waco on Netflix, because they're going to show you that the media drove the entire thing, just like they're driving what's going on today. And just like they chased Princess Diana into the tunnel. The media is deadly. They are owned. And the media really refused to put any humanity into the Waco story. It's tragic. So anyway, let's get back to it. You are to distribute this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. You are to allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the foreigners residing among you and who have children. You are to consider them as native-born Israelites along with you. They are to be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. Okay, so this is the foreigners residing among them who have children. You're to consider them as native-born Israelites. Along with you, they're to be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. In whatever tribe a foreigner resides, there you are to give them their inheritance, declares the sovereign Lord. All right, Ezekiel 48. Okay, this looks like it's a lot of boundaries, so let's get to it and let's just bear with it, okay? These are the tribes listed by name. At the northern frontier, Dan will have one portion. And you notice, here's the Lord allotting land again. We went through this in the days of Moses. If you remember, when the land of Canaan was conquered, then they started allotting plots of land to the different tribes. And we labored through that. And here it's happening again now, because they've been in captivity for, I believe, 70 years. So they're coming out. All right, here we go. These are the tribes listed by name. At the northern frontier, Dan will have one portion. It will follow the Hethlon road to Lebo-Hamath, Hazer Enan, and the northern border of Damascus next to Hamath will be part of its border from the east side to the west side. Asher will have one portion. It will border the territory of Dan from east to west. Naphtali will have one portion. It will border the territory of Asher from east to west. Manasseh will have one portion. It will border the territory of Naphtali from east to west. Ephraim will have one portion. It will border the territory of Manasseh from east to west. Reuben will have one portion. It will border the territory of Ephraim from east to west. Judah will have one portion. It will border the territory of Reuben from east to west. Bordering the territory of Judah from east to west will be the portion you are to present as a special gift. Now remember, they're not going to be two tribes anymore. They're going to be one big tribe, Israel. There's not going to be Israel and Judah. It's just Israel. Bordering the territory of Judah from east to west will be the portion you are to present as a special gift. It will be 25,000 cubits wide, and its length from east to west will equal one of the tribal portions. The sanctuary will be in the center of it. The special portion you're to offer to the Lord will be 25,000 cubits long and 10,000 cubits wide. This will be the sacred portion for the priests. Once again, the priests get the first fruits. They get everything great. Okay, for serving the Lord, for being one of his. It will be 25,000 cubits long on the north side, 10,000 cubits wide on the west side, 10,000 cubits wide on the east side, and 25,000 cubits long on the south side, so it's rectangular. In the center of it will be the sanctuary of the Lord. This will be for the consecrated priests, the Zadokites, who were faithful in serving me and did not go astray, as the Levites did when the Israelites went astray. It will be a special gift to them from the sacred portion of the land, a most holy portion bordering the territory of the Levites. Alongside the territory of the priests, the Levites will have an allotment 25,000 cubits long, 10,000 cubits wide. Total length will be 25,000 cubits and its width 10,000 cubits. They must not sell or exchange any of it. This is the best of the land and must not pass into other hands because it's holy to the Lord. The remaining area, 5,000 cubits wide and 25,000 cubits long, will be for the common use of the city, for houses and for pasture land. The city will be in the center of it and will have these measurements. The north side, 4,500 cubits. the south side 4,500 cubits, the east side 4,500 cubits, and the west side 4,500 cubits. Boy, the Lord's really a mathematician, isn't he? So that's a square. The pasture land for the city will be 250 cubits on the north, 250 on the south, 250 on the east, 250 cubits on the west. Math is important, and it really is to the Lord. What remains of the area bordering, I can't tell you how many times I prayed to the Lord, could you please open my mind and explain intermediate algebra to me? Because he's the greatest mathematician in the universe, and I was like, Lord, I'm just struggling with this. I'm telling you, I took it 3 times and failed it 3 times. It was so difficult. Of course, I was going through family court and a lot of other things, and you got to have your mind clear when you're studying something like that. All right. What remains of the area bordering on the sacred portion and running the length of it will be 10,000 cubits on the east and 10,000 cubits on the west side. Its produce will supply food for the workers of the city. The workers from the city who farm it will come from all the tribes of Israel. The entire portion will be a square, 25,000 cubits on each side. As a special gift, you will set aside the sacred portion along with the property of the city. What remains on both sides of the area formed by the sacred portion and the property of the city will belong to the prince. It will extend eastward from the 25,000 cubits of the sacred portion to the eastern border and westward from the 25,000 cubits to the western border. Both these areas running the length of the tribal portions will belong to the prince, and the sacred portion with the temple sanctuary will be in the center of them. So the property of the Levites and the property of the city will lie in the center of the area that belongs to the prince. The area belonging to the prince will lie between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin. As for the rest of the tribes, Benjamin will have one portion. It will extend from the east side to the west side. Simeon will have one portion. It will border the territory of Benjamin from east to west. Issachar will have one portion. It will border the territory of Simeon from east to west. Zebulun will have one portion. It will border the territory of Issachar from east to west. Gad will have one portion. It will border the territory of Zebulun from east to west. The southern boundary of Gad will run south from Tamar to the waters of Meribah Kadesh, then along the Wadi of Egypt to the Mediterranean Sea. This is the land you are to allot as an inheritance to the tribes of Israel, and these will be their portions, declares the sovereign Lord. These will be the exits of the city, beginning on the north side, which is 4,500 cubits long. The gates of the city will be named after the tribes of Israel. The 3 gates on the north side will be the gate of Reuben, the gate of Judah, and the gate of Levi. On the east side, which is 4,500 cubits long, will be 3 gates, the gate of Joseph, the gate of Benjamin, and the gate of Dan. On the south side, which measures 4,500 cubits, will be 3 gates, the gate of Simeon, the gate of Issachar, and the gate of Zebulun. And on the west side, which is 4,500 cubits long, will be 3 gates, the gate of Gad, the gate of Asher, and the gate of Naphtali. The distance all around will be 18,000 cubits, and the name of the city from that time on will be "The Lord is there." And the way it's written here is really beautiful. It's like it's normal and then it drops down, and in different print it says, "The Lord is there." I love you very much. Tomorrow we'll start with Daniel. Okay? I love you. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.